I pulled back the curtain and I seen this black figure, and it was darting at incredible speed back and forth in front of my pool, and I could see arm motion, and it was on two legs. And I kept thinking, what in the name of God am I looking at? I can't believe this. And it would dart back and forth, and then it would disappear like it was going into the center of the yard, and I couldn't see it at that point because there was woods behind it and it was dark.
Barbara, Sandi, Debbie, thanks for being with us tonight. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks for asking us to come on. We're glad to. We always have
our
talk
pleasure.
about Bigfoot.
So we know that you ladies are the Sisters of the Moon. Is that right?
Correct.
Can you tell us about that? How you started that? What it's about?
Well, we were just some women. There was 5 of us originally, and we got together at an expedition someone was having, and we all met, and we wanted to form just a female-only group. And we had one member that she was a big Stevie Nicks fan. So they started calling ourselves Sisters of the Moon, squatting squatchers with a pair of knockers.
I did not know that. Awesome. That's what they okay. That's crazy.
That's what we have on our T-shirts and our stickers and
yeah.
Okay.
That is awesome. We're gonna need some shirts.
Yeah. I gotta get some of those. Post those on our face. Go find our Facebook page and post those on there.
Oh my gosh! I should have worn my hat.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys got together based on being at like some outing. You all were interested in Bigfoot at this point,
Right,
or
right.
cryptids and all that.
Right.
I guess we can start one at a time. But how did you guys get involved in being interested in Bigfoot?
Sandi, you go first.
How did I get involved? My sister kind of invited me into the group. But what sparked my interest goes way back. But Legend of Boggy Creek as a little girl sparked my interest. But I remember looking on a map at Arkansas, and I lived in Georgia, so I thought, well, I'm good. That's only one Bigfoot, and he ain't going to come all the way to Georgia to get me. But anyways, what happened with really sparked my interest, and I think it might have helped Barbara spark hers a little bit more too, is I lived in a really small town, but my house was behind a small stream, a little creek, and it had a bridge right past my house. People had to go over the bridge to get over the stream. And one night my son was outside. I had 2 small dogs, and he let them outside to go to the bathroom. And I was inside in bed, but he was up later than me, so he let the puppies out. Well, I got up to go into the house, through the house, and my son was tearing through the back door, and the puppies were right on his heels. And he shut the door real hard. He says, "Mom," he says, "I don't know what is out there," but he says, "Don't go outside right now. Don't go outside." I said, "What do you mean?" Our house was right next to the woods. I mean, a few feet, probably I'd say 150 feet away from the wood line. And we had a little shed out there on the edge of the woods. And he says, "I don't know what I just heard, Mom." He said, "But it was loud. It had a powerful, powerful scream to it." He says, "And it scared me to death." He said, "And Zeus and Zimba was my dog's name." He said, "It scared them." And he says, "They think they're mighty," and they come flying in the house with him. And I really didn't think a whole lot more about it. I just said, well, that's crazy. Well, curiosity got the best of me, and I went into my little room. I had my computer up at a day or two later, and I was pulling up animal sounds, and my son was there. And I said, "Come here and listen to some of these sounds." Well, he couldn't see what I was looking at and clicking on. And I clicked on a bear growl. I said, "Was that what you heard?" He said, "No, nowhere near it." I said, "Okay." And I clicked on a bobcat growl. You know how loud they can be. They can make crazy sound. He said, "Mom, that wasn't it." And I clicked on a fox and, anything I could think of. He said, no, Mom, that wasn't it. Well, me, for kicks and giggles, there was a Bigfoot scream on there. I clicked on it and he went, oh, that's it. That is a lot what it sounded like right there. And I just kind of looked at him and he looked at me. He said, what was that, Mom? I said, you're not going to believe me when I tell you. I said, but it says it was a Bigfoot scream. And that completely sparked my interest with getting involved with everything. I started noticing things more. So that's how it started for me. I had the curiosity up from there on out.
Well, we were talking to you a little bit before. We know you had a sighting too, but we can get back into that in a minute. Barbara or Debbie, what got you guys into the Bigfoot world?
Well, after Sandy and I got all excited about what happened to her house in Georgia, I moved back to Texas and I bought a piece of property and I started having this crazy stuff happen at my house. We had 30 acres and we had several different pastures and we couldn't keep our pasture gates closed. Every time we close them, they'd be open back up. Couldn't keep them closed because they'd be open, close, open, close, open, close. And they were big, heavy gates. It wasn't, we had horses. They weren't pushing through the gates. They were being picked. You had to pick these gates up to open them and shut them. And then I just started finding stuff around my house. I had a deer leg thrown up on top of my house. I would find chickens. I would find headless rabbits. I was brought 3 headless rabbits. And it was just crazy. I was finding footprints. I couldn't explain it. I was hearing howls. And it was just me. And this went on for several years before I finally decided I was going to hook up with somebody to help me because I thought it was just crazy. Bigfoot wasn't going to be where I lived at, but he was. And I had someone from the DFRO come to my house, and she told me that I was having Bigfoot activity there. I was showing her the things that were going on, and she suggested playing with the sticks to me, actually. So I started putting sticks out in my pasture. And I would put them out there, say all straight up and down in the pasture. Well, the next morning I could get up and go out in my front yard and there would be the same amount of sticks straight up and down, just like mine out in the pasture. I could go out in the pasture and I could turn them sideways. The next morning I'd wake up, all the sticks in my front yard would be turning that same direction. I guess about the wildest thing that ever happened to me, I didn't talk about it for a long time because I thought it was too woo. Stuff like this just didn't happen. I took a piece of copy paper, like for a copy machine, and on one side of it I drew a stick woman, and I drew a stick dog, and a stick kitty cat, and a stick bunny rabbit because that was my pets. Well, I flipped the same piece of paper over, and on the back side of this paper, I draw a stick Bigfoot with big hands and big feet and hair sticking out all over everywhere. I take this picture out into the pasture by the little pond I have, and I put it by a bush, and I put a stick through it with the side up with me and the animals. I go inside. Now, nobody's knowing I'm doing this. Absolutely nobody knew but me. That piece of paper was out there. I went out the next morning, and when I go to that bush, the piece of paper has been picked up, put on the other side of the bush with the Bigfoot facing up and the stick back through it. It was just things like this. It's like, whoa, what's going on? I can't believe this. And just spent years interacting with them. They'd come up and coo at me at the window. I think they really liked my husband. I used to coo at him all the time going to work. But anyway, after doing this for a while, I wanted to get with somebody to help me grow with what I was doing. And I met Debi And Sandy, like I said, was my sister, and we just started going out, and things that we never imagined just started happening to us right off the bat. Just, it was amazing. And we've kept after it all these years. We still go out. It's just Sandy and Debbie and myself. But we love it. It's like somebody riding on a roller coaster ride to start having this rush from interacting with them in the fields. It's crazy. We love it. We love it. It's like speed for us. We're jacked up. Come on.
Very cool. All right, Debbie, your turn. What got you interested in Bigfoot?
Well, when I was young teenager, my daddy and I were hanging blue Christmas lights on the front porch, and we lived out in the country in Malta, Texas, and we had started on one end of the porch, and we just had a small little front porch that had a carport down at the end of it, and no other lights were on because we wanted to see the blue Christmas lights, make sure we were hanging them straight. And while we were out there, we had started on one end and was working our way down. And before we got centered from over down the dirt road that we lived on, coming down to our left, we heard this just, I don't know, it's like a roar, moan, growl sound. And, I grew up in the country and we'd never heard anything like that before. And so I got a little scared because it was a new noise and a very loud and strange noise. And I said, "What was that, Daddy?" And he had paused and looked in that direction because he had heard it too. And he goes, "I don't know what that was." And then he told me to go in the house and get the gun. Well, that scared me because my daddy, and I've told this story a million times, but my daddy was a Vietnam War veteran, a Korean War veteran, and a World War II veteran.
Wow.
And he was a badass.
Wow.
Nothing scared him. And when he told me to go get his gun, I knew he was concerned, and so that scared me. And so I told him, I said, "No, Daddy, you come in with me." And he goes, "No, go on and get my gun." And I said, "Daddy, please." And I was sitting there pleading with him. And then that time period, we heard it again, but this time it was closer, like it was coming up towards us. And it sounded like it was in my mama's front yard, which was right next door to us. And so now I got really scared because it was coming towards us, and I started crying. And I was like, "Daddy, please come in the house." He goes, "No, go get my gun right now." And then the next thing we heard, sounded like it was just right there at the end of our porch in our carport on the other side of our car. And Daddy pushed me in the front door, and I went into this way, and he went in the other way and went through my bedroom. And we had an old house and it all connected, So he came out the other end of my bedroom and went into the hall bedroom and got his gun out of the drawer in there and came back through. And I was scared to death. My mama was sick in the bed in the front room, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I was I was in there roaring and moaning and growling and trying to make that noise that we had heard out there while I was still crying. And then I started going around from window to window and trying to watch Daddy to make sure nothing got him, and don't know what I was going to do if it did. But then he came back in and told me to call my Aunt Overly, which was my mama's sister that lived just down the road, and she had lived there her whole life. And so I'm on the phone trying to make that noise to her. And she was like, "Oh, it was probably just one of Miss Clay Schulte's cows that was across the street from us, across the dirt road." And so that made us feel better. Well, my mama was sick with cancer. And so the next day, Miss Clay Schulte was the lady that came down and actually gave my mama her shots for her, her pain. And so my daddy called me in there and he said, "Debbie, come in here and make that noise for Miss Clay Schulte that we heard last night." And so I did. I was roaring and moaning and growling for her. And she was in her rocking chair, just rocking. And she had this really concerned look on her face. And she was like, "Oh, Mr. Bob, I wish you hadn't told me that." And he goes, "Oh, don't worry, don't worry. Overly told us it was probably just your cows or one of your cows over there." And she said, "Oh, no, Mr. Bob, they're all up in DeKalb being bred right now." And so we didn't know what it was. Now, we lived about 30 miles or so from Falk, Arkansas. And we had heard of what was called back then. We didn't know what Bigfoot was. We had never heard the term Bigfoot before, but we knew about the Fount Monster. And we knew it was a hairy, scary thing. We'd gone to see the premiere of it in Texarkana when it came out, and I was a lot younger then. But so we just didn't know, and but now we do.
I could ask you to try to repeat that yell. I don't know if you want to try it or not. Up to you.
I'm sure you still could, right?
Sounds like you did it pretty well.
I'm sure I could, but I'll pass on that one.
Okay,
I have to do all the, all the arm motions and everything.
Yeah.
We had to try. We had to try to get to that. Well, Sandi, why don't you tell us about your sighting? What you saw? What happened?
Oh, all right. I had a little tiny teacup chihuahua. She probably weighed 2.5 pounds, and I had a back patio off my bedroom, and about every night she'd wake me up and I'd have to let her out because she slept with me. I'd have to let her out to go potty. And I'd always flip on the light and watch her go out in the yard and come back in. She'd be pretty quick about it. Well, this morning, it was probably 2 a.m. I had a big white above ground pool in my backyard. And it was a pretty good moon, so you could see the pool. And it was probably about 52 inches high, maybe total. And for some reason, I just pulled back the curtain. I had a French door that I used to go in and out off that back patio, off my bedroom, and I pulled back the curtain. And I was holding Sadie Mae, and I don't know why I chose to look out before I turned on the light. I hardly ever did that, but I did it that night. And I pulled back the curtain, and I seen this black figure, and it was darting at incredible speed back and forth in front of my pool. And I could see it because of the white pool liner. It probably stood maybe just a little bit above the pool, but I could make out the body, and I could see arm motion, and it was on 2 legs, but it wasn't big. It wasn't no 6 or 7 foot Bigfoot by no means. And I kept thinking, what in the name of God am I looking at? I can't believe this. And it would dart back and forth, and then it would disappear like it was going into the center of the yard, and I couldn't see it at that point because there was woods behind it and it was dark. And then I would watch again, and it would show back up in front of the pool, and it's like it was super excited. It would go right back and forth, and then it would dart back to the yard again. It did this 2 or 3 times, and I even pulled the curtain back and went, am I losing my mind? What in the world is this? And I pulled it back one more time, and it did it again. And at that point, I said, I'm going to turn on the light. So I turned on my back porch light, and lo and behold, boom, it's gone. But what I did see in the center of my yard when the light was on was an armadillo. It was digging and rutting, and we all know armadillos are bigger than taller than a pool. They're small. So whatever it was, and I am almost positive it was a juvenile Bigfoot, and it was out there trying to either catch or play with the armadillo, is the only thing I could think of. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I know what I've seen. It was the speed of it was what kept blowing me away, is how fast it could move. So it was messing with the armadillo. It had no idea
out there
I was looking at it.
kicking that armadillo around.
Something.
Like
The next morning I went out there, and you could see the holes where the armadillo had been digging, but the yard was pretty grassy, so I didn't see any prints or anything like that. So it was a flat yard, a grassy yard. But that was my sighting. So it wasn't a big guy, but it was a juvenile.
So did you have woods really close to your house, did you say, or?
Oh yeah. There was probably 2,000 acres behind my house.
Okay. So it's probably not the first time he was hanging out in your
my
backyard.
house on 11 acres, but we were towards the front of the road, and my house probably sat on 3 of it. And off to the back of my property was a big pond, and woods was all beyond that too. So
Yeah, it makes me wonder if he's not been hanging around your pool or something like that. You know what I mean? Getting a
I
drink
think
here
it
and
was
there.
just probably walked to the edge of the wood line, seen the armadillo, but I really truly believe that there was probably some bigger ones out there watching the little one. I think they watch out for their use. So
And as the
that's just
crow
my
flies,
thought.
Sandy, you were close to the Altamaha River also.
Oh yeah, I wasn't, but maybe a couple of miles from a huge river. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there was forest all around where I lived. It was just thousands of acres of woods. I did have neighbors and houses, but we all were backed up to those wood lines. But we weren't close. I mean, every neighbor probably had anywhere from 8 to 15 acres each. So we weren't on top of each other.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Very
that
cool.
was my sighting.
Awesome. So, Barbara, we were talking earlier. Did you say you guys do a YouTube channel? Is that right?
No,
Or
we don't do a channel. We've just done lots of interviews. You
okay,
just look Sisters of the Moon Bigfoot and all kinds of audio videos. That pop up.
okay, cool. So, why don't you guys talk about your, whatever you guys have encountered, your best experiences together, or some things that you've heard, or some encounters that you guys have stuck with you guys, or whatever you want to throw at us. Go ahead.
We've had
Make
so
one of the
many.
many, ladies.
Hey, Debbie, you might as well throw out the big guns with the gibberish.
The gibberish.
Yeah.
Well, um, we were camping, and we were in Oklahoma, and it was me and just one of the other girls that we had in our group at the time. Uh, and she and I were by ourselves, and we were going to. We had another person that was coming that used to be a member of our group. Her nickname is Henry, and we never knew when she was going to show up. All hours of the night sometimes, and she'd surprise us. But it started out, and it was just me and Carrie, and we had never ever been to this site before that we were camping at. We had just ridden around and looked and everything, and then we was like, okay, this spot looks good, and so we pitched a tent there, and we were set up there was a hill that went up a little bit, but it was just a slight incline, and then the woods got really thick back behind that, back there, and where we were camping was still heavily treed, and then there was a big lake area just on the right there, kind of it went downhill just a little bit, and then the lake was there, and so we had sent, where we were at to Henry and to Barbara because they were going to be showing up. Well, Barbara was coming the next day, and like I said, Henry was supposed to be there, but we never knew when she was going to come. And so Carrie and I were sitting out there, and we'd gotten our tent put up, and we started while we were putting up the tent. We started hearing things, and we were like, okay, that's interesting. And we just kept putting it up. And we made it an intention of ours to never look towards what we were hearing. We would just act like we didn't hear it. And so we kept putting up the tent, and we kept hearing stuff in the woods. And finally, when we got through, we started a fire and sat down and said, all right, well, we faced the woods where we were hearing the sounds from. And so while we were sitting there waiting and talking, wondering when Henry was going to get there, we started hearing other stuff, just more different kinds of sounds. And so we're texting Henry, and I think we texted Barbara at that time too. And we're like, we've got stuff going on, and asked, where Henry was at. And she never answered. And so the more stuff that we were hearing and having happen over a period of time, we finally decided that we would go into the tent. Well, once we went into the tent, we had also, I want to preface this by saying we had strung twinkle lights around our tent. We always try to hang like Christmas lights. And so we had put that around kind of three sides, but mainly it was back in the back, especially. But so Carrie and I go into the tent, and her cot was on one end, and then mine was up against the front wall, but on the other end. And while we're in the tent, everything starts to amp up. And we were having, we could hear walking outside around us. Well, we're texting Henry and asking her, where you at? There's stuff going on. We don't know what it is, but this is what we're hearing and everything. And so it just proceeded to pick up and escalate more and more. And finally, it got to the point to where something hit the side of the tent. And so Carrie got off of her cot, and we both ended up in the middle of the tent. And just over a period of time, more and more things started happening. We it sounded like things were being thrown at us, at the tent. At one point, we were sitting in the floor because it had escalated so much. We had gotten down into the middle of the floor because it had hit the side of the tent, and we were, up against the tent walls. And so we got in the middle of the floor. And at one point, something on the backhand side of our tent was dragging either its finger or a stick or something along the roof line of our tent. Well, this particular tent that we had like a little closet area or whatever that kind of jutted out in the back. And it was just narrow, just probably about that big. And we had put a bucket and inside of it and made it our potty area. And we had used the restroom in there. And when it got to that potty area, it hesitated. But we could still see the stick or the finger or whatever up there, and it hesitated. And we started out looking at it on this side, and we had turned this way. And the next thing we knew, while we're watching this, something else hit our tent from over in this corner. So now we knew there were two of whatever it was. And we were thinking it was Bigfoot, but we didn't see it, so we don't really know. We did hear what sounded like whoops from the distance earlier, but it wasn't a whole lot, and like I said, it was off in the distance. And so over that period of that night, we had it hit our tent several times, drug stuff along the tent. We could hear it walking and all of that. And the whole time we're texting and texting and texting Henry, wanting to know where she's at, and she never responded. And so it was a very long night. And not because I could talk about this for a long time, but but it was a very long night. And so finally, I thought we would get up, we'd get up off the floor and get back in our cots because it would quiet down. And as soon as we would get back up in our cots, within 5 minutes, it would do something else. It would either hit our tent, throw something at the tent, or something. And we'd end up both back down in the middle of the floor again. And that went on back and forth like that to where we were getting up and down so much that I finally just laid down on the floor and said that this is where I'm going to sleep tonight. And I mean, we even at one point, we carry, so I mean, we're females, and it's not Bigfoot that we carry for, it's humans. And so we want the protection from that. We're more scared of them, than we are Bigfoot, actually. And so at one point, when we were hearing them like moving around, what sounded like out kind of in front of our tent, at one point we both decided that we were going to get our guns and go out when we heard it and try to catch them. And so we stood at the door, and we both have our pistols in our hands. And finally, it was one of those doors you could zip it, or it also had Velcro spots. And so we just had it Velcroed at the time. And so it had a little bar that went down in it. So when you opened it, it was almost like it was on a hinge, And so we stood there and waited until we started hearing something out front again. And when we did, we both went out there, and I always joke around and say we look like Charlie's Angels, with our guns. But so we went out there and didn't see anything. There was nothing that we could see. Of course, at that time, we only had the lights of the twinkle lights that were around our tent. So we go back in and we sit down, we wait and wait. And so just a little while later, it starts up again. And we're hearing the movement and the running around. We could hear like the footfall. And you could tell that it was something running on 2 feet. And so Carrie and I had decided that, she had a big truck, and then I had a car at the time, a Jeep Cherokee. And we were like, let's take our key fobs and we'll stand in the door and we'll wait until we hear them again. And we think they're out there. And let's hit our lights on our, zap our key fobs, and our lights, mine, I know, automatically came on. And so we stood there and waited and waited. And then we heard something, and hit the keys, went out the door like Charlie's Angels again. Nothing. Didn't see a single thing. And so this time we had to get in the vehicles, turn them off, because mine started, automatically when I hit it. And anyway, we go back in. It was just all night. We were up and down, up and down, up and down, and still texting Henry, wanting to know where she was at. And of course, Barbara was getting messages too, and stuff. And so when we had first got there and was setting up the tent, that's when we started hearing stuff. And then after we got the tent set up and everything, that's when things were already escalating and picking up. And I didn't have time to put out my recorders. So I didn't have any recorders out that night. All I could do was take the recorders that I had and turn them on inside the tent and hope that it was, picking up whatever, like when it would hit the tent or anything. And it did, it caught all that. You can hear like the whole tent sounding like it's going to collapse while it was shaking after it was hit every time and stuff. And you could hear our reactions and stuff as we were like, not screaming, but how it startles you and you're like, and stuff like that. You can hear all that. And so the next day, well, actually, like I said, we were up and down all night, and finally dozed off to sleep. And it was probably about 4 a.m. at least, maybe a little later. And I woke up because I heard something outside. Well, when I opened my eyes, it was daylight. And so I look outside and I'm thinking, man, this is still going on. Well, when I look out, I see Henry out there. And I go outside and I'm like, where have you been? You're never going to believe what happened, because we were sending messages, but they weren't going through. And she just stopped me and put her hands up and said, hold up. Before you tell me anything, let me tell you what I saw when I pulled in. And she had gotten there, still dark, middle of the night, early morning. And she pointed over to the left side of the tent. And then she reached down to her leg and she kind of stood up and had her arms like in a running motion and had the back of her leg up off the ground. And she said, I saw this. And she reached down to her calf area. And she said, I could see a leg up in the air like it was running, and pointed at where she saw it at. And she said it looked like it was running away from the tent. And it was down my side of the tent. And she said it just disappeared back in there. And I was just nodding, and then I said, well, let me tell you what happened. And so we fill her all in on it. And then Barbara shows up a little later that same day. And we make sure this time that before it gets dark, we strap some recorders out to the trees. And so I'm out there strapping recorders, zip tying them to trees. I had 2 that I was putting up in the hill, up on the tree line where it went up the hill. And I had already put one out to my left, and then I moved down the tree line and I was working on one, hanging another one up. So the first one was going, and I had already turned the second one on while I was zip tying it. Barbara and Carrie and Henry are down it went uphill. So I was kind of up a hill a little. They were down at the tent in that area. And so over to my left, I heard what to me at the time sounded like a cough, kind of like, just a light little 2-syllable cough. And so I thought it was Barbara because she had been to my left earlier. And I said, "There's Miss Barbara." And I looked over in that direction, but she wasn't there. And I looked more and I was like, "Barbara?" And then I turned around and I hollered, "Barbara." Well, I'm now looking towards the tent at the bottom, kind of that little hill. And she steps out from the backside of that tent and says, "What?" And all of this is on the recorders. Both of them caught it. And I said, "Did you cough?" And she goes, "No." And I said, "Did anybody cough?" And she goes, "No." And then I'm thinking, "Oh, shit." And I go, "Okay, hold on a minute." And I just hightail it down that hill. And I'm talking the whole time because I got nervous all of a sudden because I was like, okay, somebody coughed. And it wasn't Barbara or Henry or Carrie. And so I'm down there telling them what had happened. Well, very long story short, after after we got back home and we're listening to all the audio and stuff, I had listened to that recorder, of course, first, but then I get the other recorder off the other tree, the first one I had put out. And so now what I'm hearing is I'm down there with Barbara and the girls, and I'm talking, and we're all talking about what just happened and stuff up there. And you can hear that in the background that we're all talking. But at the same time, you hear, and now this creeped me out a lot, and it's still kind of creepy to me. But I heard something that was just plain as day. It sounded like it was right up on that recorder, and it's a very breathy sound. And it goes, "Hey, Debi." Just like it's saying, "Hey, Debi." But it broke my name into 2 definite syllables. And I just got goosebumps again. I can't believe that. Oh, that story. But that was pretty freaky. And I don't know if it had just, we holler at each other, call each other, like I was calling Barbara a whole lot. and Henry and all of them during the day. And then, of course, I had hollered at Barbara right when I heard that cough. I was like, "Barbara. And finally, just, "What?" But so when I heard that, of course, I got in touch with every single one of them. I'm like, "Y'all aren't going to freaking believe this." And, but it freaked me out. That was.
Were you guys talking at all out loud during this whole night? Like,
Oh, yeah,
whatever was out there, could it hear you, whatever you were saying? Like, were you
definitely.
saying each other's names? Do you
Oh,
think
yeah.
it heard your name?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you can tell just by listening to us, we're very talkative, especially me. And I'm loud too. But I mean, we all are. And we make it a point to kind of be loud sometimes because we want, if there's anything out there, we want it to hear us and we want to draw them in. But this was one of our first times together as a group, really. It was probably the third, fourth
first year. It was the first year we went out.
Yeah. And so we never in a million years, or I didn't at least, I didn't expect anything like that to happen. But it did, and it was pretty dang cool.
Yeah, that's definitely creepy too.
Cool
Yeah,
and freaky. Yeah.
it was. Yeah, it was all of the above. And but
Well, she completely left out the gibberish.
I did. Oh yeah. That's right. That's where we were getting on. The gibberish actually, had happened in the middle of the first night that we were there, completely by ourselves. And that night that we had been up and down, I had fallen asleep on the floor, and there was a tree root that went through there, and it was just so uncomfortable. And so finally I was like, okay, we hadn't heard anything in a while. So I just got up in my cot, and my cot was against that front wall, and then Carrie's was on the end, and she was closest to that hill. And so I'm laying there. She had her back to me. She was facing the end of the tent wall. And so I'm laying there, and all of a sudden, from what sounded like was out to my right, but in front of me, kind of coming from that area where the hill is, but it sounded like it was closer out towards where our vehicles were parked. Just all of a sudden, I hear this blah, 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 blah. And you know how your mind, you're not expecting to hear that. And it's not words that we're familiar with, but it's definitely something that sounded like it was talking. And so I'm like, what in the heck am I hearing? And when I heard it, I finally just jumped up and on one foot hit the ground, and then I hit Carrie, and she rolled over and looked at me, and I just went like this and then pointed and like, listen. And then I was like, did you hear that? And she nodded, yeah. And so I never in a million years expected to hear anything like that. I mean, we had heard, whoops and calls and stuff like that before, but this was definitely, to us, and even on the audio, you can hear it. It sounds like some sort of communication, and like they're talking. But that was, yeah, that's the big part. And I just got so carried away.
Yeah, you did.
That's
I
okay.
doing that.
Do you guys have?
She didn't know she had captured it for a long time. It was what, Debbie, almost a year later that you finally got around to listening to it?
Yeah. I was hoping that we had captured it, but it took a long time. I hate listening to audio.
Too.
And I just want to preface this by saying we weren't doing this trying to catch anything. We were out there we were researching for ourselves. And so I wasn't thinking about, oh my God, I've got to put this out, but we would let people listen to it and stuff when we had it. And we had been asked to speak at a conference in Oklahoma. And that's actually the reason we had all gotten together at this camp where we were camping. And because we were going to talk about to each other and try to come up with what we were going to talk about for the conference. And so, that first night, it was just me and Carrie, and then Henry shows up about, I think, 4:30 or so in the morning, and then Barbara comes the next day, and never in a million years expected any of this to happen. And so.
No, our Bigfoot and it totally surprised us because we never dreamed the things that we came across out in the woods were going to happen to us. We thought we were just going to go out there and hear some howling off in the distance, Nothing was going to come in our camp, and we really got surprised. We have stuff come up in the camp all the time, and you just hear them pitter-pattering around our tent. They'll be running round and round and round it.
Yeah, needless to say, we've been back there tons of times, and it has been one of the best locations, for us. We've had 2 or 3 really good places that we have been lucky at on a regular basis, and we tried not to go back, like weekend after weekend like we wanted to. We give them some time to rest, but
Well, Barbara, you said that you had something happen just recently, not too long ago.
I did. After all these years, I finally think I saw something right there where I live again, by the river. It was, I remember this very well. It was June 11th. It was the strawberry full moon because it was really super bright this morning. And I had gotten up, it was about 20 minutes to 6. And morning time was coming, but there was still moonlight shining. But it wasn't quite light. And I was letting my little dog out the door, and something caught my attention coming out between two other RVs just right there in the park. And I thought it was someone walking out to their car to go to work. But I got to noticing this was really tall. Whatever this was about 7 foot tall. Very lean. It was not big and bulky. It was tall and lean, and it had these long arms that it just kept throwing out to the side. But it was like Sandy. I couldn't get any details because there's not quite enough light, but it was like Sandy. It was like it was darting super fast. It would dart to a spot and stop and throw its arms out, and then it would dart over to another spot and throw its arms out. And finally, it went down to the end of the road at the RV park and went back out in the woods. But that was pretty amazing me after all these years of being there right in the middle of all this stuff going on. And I never could get to see one. It made me angry, but I was happy. I called Debbie and I called Sandy and told them I just saw something.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was. And
Yeah, it's very cool.
yeah,
That's how we feel. We've been talking about Bigfoot forever, and we just want to see one.
I know.
Just
And
one. That's all.
it's amazing when you do finally see some.
It'll happen when you least expect it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Sounds
we're in a good hot spot with Michigan just north of us. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff going on, and we get out as much as possible. But you know,
Oh, we
you
got
gotta
Michigan
really-
in the north. We got Ohio to the east. We got a lot going on. Up
Yeah.
Is your group just
Sure.
guys? Do you have women that go with you?
No, our wives aren't into it, or my wife
They
isn't
don't.
anyway.
Yeah,
She
they
doesn't
don't believe
believe
that.
She doesn't believe it. She supports me
No.
and the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
but
For sure.
But,
But
no,
yeah, they don't believe it.
I wish
Well,
she
it
would.
might be interesting if you could find a female that would be willing to go out with y'all, because possibly she could cause
You
some
think they're more
interaction.
attracted to the females?
Definitely
What you're
attracted
saying?
to females.
We think that's why we've been so lucky with
Yeah.
having the activity we've had, is because usually it's just 3 of us. And now especially it's just the 3 of us, but sometimes it's just 2 of us.
You're right.
And I think it's just because, we're the weaker sex and we're not intimidating. Usually when they see men out in the woods, y'all have guns.
It's your
And I mean,
smell.
women, yeah, too. We smell better, and we always spray perfume, and all that
And
stuff.
we make our presence
I
known.
didn't mean you smelled better. I just mean you women put off different pheromones.
Brian,
Yeah,
we
Which
gotta get,
actually could smell
We
better.
do
Like,
smell better.
We're putting
yeah,
on
that is true.
happiness.
That is true. You do smell. I love the way women smell. So yeah, you're right.
Brian, we got to get some perfume and female perfume and spray on us before we go out squatching again.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna
We-
do that.
We spread around the tent and around the fire and stuff, and
But when we
We
go out, we
should.
have a good time. It's like we have it lit up. We have Christmas lights hanging all over everywhere, and we're playing music and we're singing and we're dancing. We're just trying to make lots of noise, because I guarantee you, if Bigfoot is there, they will find you. You don't have to go looking. They will
sure.
come to you.
yeah.
We've heard that a lot from different people that
Yes.
going out and howling and banging on trees and stuff, that doesn't work. Just go out
Yeah.
there and just do what you do. Camp, have fun, talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, let
we
them
were
find the party.
Yeah,
We were- oops.
exactly.
We were in Kisatchie National Forest in Louisiana a while back, a couple years ago, I guess, and it was the 3 of us, and we rode all around through there because I was in Texas, I think, still at the time, but I wasn't real familiar with all the places in Kisatchie. And then Barbara and Sandy had come in from where she was living. And so we went out there and just drove around until we found a spot and said, this looks good. Well, it was at the end of the dirt road, just a long dirt road out in the middle of the woods in Kisatchie National Forest. And so we're like, did it dead end, y'all, or was there a gate there?
No, there was just a little trail.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that it just kind of dead ended and stopped and turned into a trail. And we just pitched the tent on the side of the road there. And we put our cots in a U shape, and had the front door. And I think we had a gazebo type tent, that we put in front of it, and had our cooking stuff there. And we try to cook and make, smelly stuff. And so we're sitting kind of in front of the tent, and we have our lights up, of course, and stuff. And Sandy, you tell that story.
Yeah.
Aren't we talking about when you were sick, Debbie?
Yeah, I was sick.
Oh, yeah. Debbie had not been feeling good, and she went and laid in her cot. Me and Barbara were sitting in the gazebo that she set up, which was attached to the tent. Everything was opened up. There was a tent and the gazebo in front. Well, we had white Christmas lights lined up behind the tent where Debbie was laying, so you could see through the actual tent wall. And me and Barbara was just sitting there, and we were just chit-chatting, and I'd look over at Debbie from time to time, and she was laying there. And I looked over one time, and I seen an actual shadow, a big shadow that just stepped in front of the tent. And I looked at Debbie, and Barbara just seen my eyes get big, and I kept going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I said, Debbie, right at your head. I'd never seen a woman move so fast before in my life.
I was almost dead, y'all. I thought I was about to die, but I saw her face and her looking right past me at that wall behind me. And when she started saying, oh my God, I perked up. Boy, I rolled out of that tent, and I was on the floor. Out of the cot.
Barbara knew I had seen something, and she had on her ears listening for sounds around us. And it's like I've never seen movement like that. It's like it didn't walk past the tent. It stood there and it went straight down. It's just like it just went straight down. And Barbara was listening, and she could hear movement because there was a little bit of gravel and stuff around in the area. She could hear something that sounded like it was walking across the gravel. Well, lo and behold, Debbie, we were calling out. We didn't know if it was human or Bigfoot or what. We didn't know. I was thinking it was, because it definitely wasn't shaped quite like a man was at all. But anyways, we spelled out the word gun, G-U-N. We have guns, blah, 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 because I knew I had actually seen something. But unfortunately, which it wasn't really unfortunately, we'll finish it, a huge storm was rolling in, and it had already started thundering and lightning from a distance, and a storm rolled in that night, and it came a downpour. And I remember laying in my cot and telling Barbara and Debbie, I said, well, if there's anything there, we're not going to see anything in the morning. I said, the rain's going to wash it away. Well, lo and behold, the next morning we all got out of the tent, and I went and sat in the vehicle. I was on a phone call, and Barbara and Debbie had started walking around the tent, and they come up to the car where I was sitting. They said, come here. Well, there was some wild ferns that was around our tent behind the back of it. Whatever I had seen was heavy enough to where it put indentions exactly where I said I seen something go down, and the indentions of where the ferns were pressed down was still there. So that was my confirmation I had not lost my mind, and I knew what I had seen. So it was pretty cool, but it scared me to death. It scared poor Debbie too. But
well, it healed me. I mean, I was.
Yeah, she was healed.
That adrenaline, I tell you, I was good to go after that. I really was. I'm not even kidding. I thought I was on my deathbed while I was laying in that cot.
The healing
did.
power of Bigfoot.
Oh, man. Hey, that adrenaline, when that pops in, you can do unbelievable stuff.
And the next morning, the next day, I mean, I didn't feel bad at all again after that. I'm not even kidding.
He was
And
here.
that was the same time. I don't think we've told this story before. It was hot. It was hot out there, and Sandy, isn't that where you had taken your top off?
Yeah, I was trying to get some sun.
So we're sitting by the tent during the day the next day, and we're just the three of us, and she's sitting out there sunbathing in her bra, and this big old truck comes hauling down through there, and it just stops right there at our campsite. And we're like, oh crap. Sandy grabs her shirt and just lays it on top of her, trying to cover herself up. And this guy gets out, and we're like, who the heck? Oh my God. So we're like, we got our gun, we're trying to make sure we got our guns near us. And when he gets out, it's a guy that I knew. And I'm like, his name's Joe.
I knew it was y'all. I knew it was y'all.
We're like, what? He had come down there like looking for a place to hunt and stuff, and we had been in the tent, I guess, but he saw the vehicle and I guess maybe the stickers or something, and come back. I was like, Lord have mercy. You never know what's going to happen in the woods. Come up on naked woman and
Hey, we come up on a naked man one time.
Well, we did.
We were in Washington. Yeah.
Let's hear it. Let's hear your naked man encounter.
That was hilarious.
We got invited up to the Olympic Peninsula by the Olympic Project. We got to go stay at their place, and we're just hiking through the forest and looking at
the
stuff.
Olympic National Forest.
Yeah, in the National Forest, and we come up to kind of like a crossroads. And about the time we're getting to that crossroad, there's a guy coming out of the woods from the other direction. He's just as naked as he can be, with a walking stick and boots and a fanny pack.
And a fanny pack. And he's got a walking stick.
Yeah. Well, we tried to chase him down, but we couldn't catch him.
We got to the end of our road where it intersected with his little trail.
Yeah.
And we're like, where did he go?
Yeah.
But
We were hoping for a sighting, but we wasn't expecting that kind of sighting.
No, we had a hairless sighting.
But the thing is, while we're standing there, we start hearing something over kind of across from us. And he was over there in the little wood line, ducked down behind trees, hiding in the tall growth.
Yeah. We found out, we ran into some more people on the trail, and except we found out he was out there a lot. He liked
hiker.
But what's odd about that, before we met up with him at that crossroads, I heard a whoop. Just plain as day, I heard a whoop. And we're talking and just yapping, and then the next thing I know, there's that naked man. And we're just,
They were whooping at him.
I gotta ask, was the fanny pack in the front or the back?
yeah.
Thank goodness we did not see any of that.
Yeah, there are some strange people out
People
there.
walk up in our tent, in our camp. One night, a guy with a 3-foot sword came walking up in our tent.
Our camp.
I mean, not our tent. We didn't invite him in our tent. No, he came in our camp. But he come holding that sword up over his head, and he's going, "Did y'all hear that? Tell me y'all heard that." This man was scared. That's another adventure. We were in Georgia on that adventure.
Oh, he wasn't just crazy. He
wasn't crazy. He was
heard
hearing
something.
Yeah.
What do you think he was going to do with a sword, though? I mean,
I don't
Wouldn't
know.
do much.
That was his protection. Literally, he was shaking. You could see like that sword when he was like, "Please tell me y'all could hear that." He had his hands up, and that sword was just shaking.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he knew that Barbara got onto him.
Yeah, I did. He had already snuck up on me in camp before they ever got there. He snuck up on me. And had told them about him whenever they got there. They got there a few minutes later, and I told them this man was just up here in our camp telling me about a murderer. He's telling me there was a murderer in the area, and I'm going, I hope it ain't you. So I'm telling him, and then that night we're sitting around. I've got my back to the road where he comes walking in, and Debbie said, Barbara, there's what man walking up behind you with a sword in his hands. And it was him. But he was hearing something. He kept calling it sounded like Medusa.
Yeah.
Medusa.
And we're thinking,
anything.
Medusa, she had snakes in her hair or something.
Yeah,
But then Barbara got on to him and, told him, you don't need to be doing that. That's a good way to get shot. We made sure we let him know we all had guns. And he goes, I was just worried about you, and he was. I think he truly was. But after he walked, and he was probably a quarter of a mile, half a mile down, probably a quarter of a mile, because we were on top of a mountain in Georgia, and it drops off back behind where we put our tent. And if you drive down there, it's real windy. So we wanted to make sure that he had actually gone back to camp and didn't just go down the road a ways and then cross back through the woods towards us. I said, we were like, we got to know that this crazy guy is back where he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so we loaded up in the Sandy's truck, and we got up there, and I said, let's just be real nice and tell him that we were coming to check on him to make sure he was okay.
Yeah, but he's coming out of the woods still holding on that sword. Scared.
Still got that sword.
He's
But
hearing stuff.
all of his clothes were in a pile in the center of his truck. Like he had just thrown them all in there. And so when we left, we drove down, turned around, and went back to camp. And within just a little while after we got back to camp, he went hauling by. And he was going fast. So we think something had, of course, scared him, obviously. Something, we call it a Medusa scream, because later that night, we heard it.
It sounded like a pterodactyl.
Mm-hmm.
It was
It was real high pitched.
It was a crazy scream.
And wasn't that the same night that we saw the shadows walking? Yeah, there were two of them.
Walking up on the tent.
One was taller and one was shorter. And we had the fire going, and we were all three in our tent, and we were in a U shape to where my foot would hit Sandy's head, Sandy's foot would hit Barbara's head. And that's how we would wake each other up, if something was happening. And we saw these two shadows coming towards us. We had the fire stoked, and because it's our light. And then we had lights along the back side of the tent on the other side where the bushes were, or trees or whatever. And when Sandy, I think, woke me up, didn't you, Sandy?
You woke me up, Debbie.
I woke you up? Okay. I couldn't remember who woke who up. They all tend to blur. But, oh, yeah, I woke you up. I kicked you with my foot in the head. And she looked at me kind of like, what the heck are you doing? And I said, look up. And you could see the shadows of the body on the front wall of our tent, but you had to look up on the roof to see their shoulders and their head. And so she kicks Barbara in the head and wakes Barbara up. And so now we're all watching these two shadows come up, and they go down the side of our tent and then go back behind our tent. And we're just laying there listening, and we can hear them moving around. And then a few minutes later, it gets just kind of silent. And we didn't know what time it was. We weren't getting our phones out to look to see what time it was. We didn't want any, lights inside the tent. And so a few minutes later, I'm not sure how long it was, we heard this loud scream, and it was real high pitched. And that's what we call now the Medusa scream, because we think that's what dude heard down in his camp that scared him so badly.
Yeah.
And so then we felt bad thinking that this guy was crazy. But
I wouldn't have felt bad. I think he was a little bit crazy. Anybody carrying a sword around is crazy.
Well,
in my opinion.
I think
But
he was scared to death because he
probably
sure
both.
acted like it. We were like,
Probably both.
he either saw or heard something, or he is crazy.
Well, in the area he was actually camped in, kind of had a reputation for people seeing stuff there and getting run out of
Yeah.
their camps also.
And he was right where he had his camp down in there. A creek ran through there,
Yeah.
and so we were like, yeah, it kind of makes sense now. He probably heard what we heard, but he was just so far away we didn't hear it. When he came running up there to check on Barbara to make sure that she was still alive, he didn't know that we were all, Sandy and I were there.
He might have been coming up there to get me to make a sacrifice. Hell, I don't know.
Hey, you never know.
You're lucky,
Probably
Barbara.
why he had the sword in his hand.
Yeah.
No,
But you
never
could,
know.
he was, I think he was really scared.
Yeah. He was very frightened.
I mean, you could see his hands just kind of shaking when he was like, please tell me you heard that. He had the sword in his left hand. Please tell me you heard that. We were
I know
like,
he
"We
told
didn't
us, and Debbie and I felt bad about it later, but he told us, he said, I don't know what it is, but it had big lungs.
Yeah, he did his hands like this.
Looked at each other like, oh, we know what it is,
Mhm.
friend.
And we
But-
were trying not to grin because we were happy now, but we were like, oh.
Cool.
That was a big trip.
Well, ladies, it's been a little bit over an hour here. We're going to wrap this show up, but we would definitely love to get you back on
We'd love to have
again
you guys back. That would be awesome.
and talk about. I know you've got
We have a
tons of
lot of
stories. You probably
stories.
got hours of stories.
We
that we can
do.
talk about.
We can
We
talk
can
hours
talk.
and hours.
Gotcha. Well, we'll set
We've
something
been
up and
very
do it
lucky.
again soon. Really
Okay.
good time.
Yeah.
And we want to thank you guys for being here with us tonight. Those are great encounters and great talking to you about Sisters of the Moon and what you guys do.
Well, thank y'all for having us.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Like Debbie said earlier, we never got into it for any fame or glory. Just our own personal satisfaction is why we go in the woods.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why we do this. We want to
Yeah.
know, and we want to help prove the existence.
Yeah. The
That's
more we
right.
learn, the more we need to learn.
Yep.
Well, I enjoyed
That's
it, y'all.
We did
Thank you.
too, Sandy.
So
Barbara,
we-
Sandy, and Debbie, thank you so much. Thanks for being
Well,
here.
thank
We'll get back
y'all.
with you guys soon, so we appreciate
Yes.
it.
Bye, ladies.
We
Good
enjoyed
night.
it. Bye,
Good
y'all.
night.
Have a good night.
Have a
Y'all
good night.
too.